Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Unstoppable Dad Project. On this week's episode, I am going to dive into effort and why effort is the example that you need to be working on setting for your kids, and why effort is the thing that you need to be praising with them. But before I get into today's topic, please make sure you're subscribed on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. We are on all the big platforms, so Apple, Spotify, Google, Spreaker, all of those. So please make sure you're subscribed. If the platform allows you to, please jump on and leave us a 5-star review. By doing those two things, you will help get the podcast out to more people who will hopefully find some value out of what it is that I am doing here, just like yourself. And on the topic of showing it and sharing it with people who might get some value from it, make sure you share it around with anybody who you think might get some value out of what it is that I am doing here. But once again, as always, thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for your support. It means the world to me. I am still, and to this day will continue to be, blown away by the growth that this podcast continues to see over the last 2 years. So effort is one of those topics that it's almost like we see that it should be given all the time. Like, we should always be putting our best effort forward. We should always be putting our best foot forward. However you want to put it, however you want to phrase it. Like, effort is a given, or should be a given. But when we really drill down to it, is it? Because, say for example, I'll look at my life and I'll look at different times in my life. And I'll look at times where I'm truly putting in an effort to achieve something, and other times where I'm just coasting. And if I look even all the way back to schooling, to first time round at university, and to different times in my life, different jobs that I've had, if I look back on those times, I've been, without sounding really arrogant, I've been blessed with a good level of intelligence, I would say, where there's certain things and certain tasks that get given to me, and I can kind of just coast through those tasks. I don't really have to put any effort into them. But yet, when I do put added effort into it, better things happen. There's a lot of times where I've been able to just coast and get by and do the bare minimum, and as a result, still achieve praise from people that, you know, look at the task that I've been given and see that I've completed it. And maybe it's been completed above their expectations. But when I really look at myself in the mirror over that time, I've gone, did I really put my best foot forward, or could I have done better? And there's always a fine line there between being too hard on yourself about the amount of effort that you've put in, and then also not really doing enough. And I think deep down, we all know those times where we really have put our best effort forward and when we really haven't. And when it comes to effort, and now that I have children, one who is about to be 8, the other who is about to be 4. So they're into that age now where they really are mirrors of ourselves. Those of you that have kids or have had kids at the ages that I've got, I can probably speak to this as a testament that they are really a mirror of your behaviors. Your actions, habits, and behaviors get reflected in them. And I don't think I thought of this phrase, and I certainly don't feel like I'm sure I've heard it from somewhere, but something that's been really replaying in my mind, a phrase that has been constantly coming up over the last little while, is if you are doing something that you don't want your kids to do, you better stop doing it. And if there is something that you want your kids to do, you better start doing it. And that phrase for me keeps reoccurring around a lot of things, a lot of little behaviors, little actions that I take each day that I've started to see manifest in them, good and bad, over the last couple of years. And it's accelerated as they've started to get older. But they're really and I've spoken about this a lot on the podcast. They are they are such creatures of, they will do what you do, they will not do what you say. So if you're not reflecting the behaviors that you would like to see in them, there's going to be a disconnect if you tell them to do something and you're not doing it yourself. And I believe that's the same thing with effort. They have to see, we have to be seen to be putting the effort into things. Like, they will inherently know if we're not putting our best foot forward with everything that we do, whether it be how engaged we are with them, if our attention is being pulled when we're meant to, when we've told them that we're going to be playing with them, we're still checking our phones, we're doing these things, and the effort that we're putting into spending time with them is not 100%, then that's going to be reciprocated, maybe not now, but later on in life, because that's going to be the example that we've set. Maybe it's the effort around actually trying to complete a task. Like, if we are cleaning our own stuff up, but we're kind of only half doing it, so we're half checking our phone while we're doing this, then when we ask them to go and clean their stuff up, you can't really be surprised when they're kind of only half doing it, but then they're half doing something else, because really deep down, that's a learnt behavior. That's what they've seen you do, and that's what they're emulating. So the effort can be the example, not just the behavior itself, because I think we look at it as the behavior itself is the example, but the effort can also be the example. And this is something that I've been really, really thinking about over the last couple of months, because I'm seeing certain things that my kids are doing where maybe they give up too easily, and maybe they can keep trying and they can do a little bit better than what they're doing. And once your kids start to get older, those of you that where maybe your kids are a little bit younger than what mine are, you will start to see this happen over time. As they start to grow up, you will start to see those behaviors that manifest themselves from you. And one thing I've really noticed, the things that really bug me about certain things that my kids do, the things that bug me the most are the things that I do, because I see that mirror of myself in front of me doing something that's maybe a little bit subpar and not to the standard I would like to hold myself to. And I see them doing it. And then I get agitated and I get angry at them. But then if I stop and I take a pause and I think, why does this make me angry? Most of the time I understand it's actually because it's something that I do regularly and that they've learnt from me. And that's where I have to go to my kids. And what I generally try and do is say, hey, look, I know I do this. It's something I shouldn't do. It's something I'm working on trying to be better at. So I want you to try and work and be better at it and not do that as well. But then from there, I've got to not continue to keep doing it. I've got to actually put the effort in to try and change that behavior within myself. And then from there, when it comes to the effort, am I really truly putting in the effort, or am I just doing what needs to be done in order to tick the box? And that is something that, when I look back at different phases of my life, when things have been going really good, I'm actually putting in a lot of effort to try and move things forward. I am really trying to push the envelope. I am 100% committed, and I am putting in the effort to try and move things forward. And when things aren't going great, I'm still taking action, but I'm only really just ticking the box. I'm doing enough to tick the box. And I do believe that effort is something that can be taught. But for kids and showing your kids, the thing that I'm coming to the realization of is it can be taught, but it needs to be taught through action, not by words. If you tell your kids that they need to try a little bit harder, they need to apply themselves a little bit more, then you're not actually doing that. You're just doing the bare minimum you need in your daily task to get by, to tick the box. They're not going to do it because they don't see there's a disconnect between what you're telling them and then what you're doing. And I was listening to a really interesting podcast the other day from it. Huberman Lab podcast, which again, I spoke about it a few times on here. If you're into science and habit change and a few other fitness training, the whole box and dice, I believe it's a really great podcast. Now, I do think with a lot of this stuff, you do have to be objective. And it's the old Bruce Lee quote where it's take what's necessary and discard what's not, because there is a lot of information on things like that. And you have to be able to look at it through an objective lens of what's going to work for you. But on this particular podcast, he was talking about the study that was done where they had essentially two groups of kids. One group of kids, they were praising for the outcome. So they were talking about, you're so smart, you're a great athlete, all of these things, and they were praising them for the outcome of a particular task. And the other group, they were praising for the effort. I love the way you tried. I love the way you applied yourself. All of these things where we're talking about not necessarily the outcome of the task, i.e., you got A's on the test or whatever, but we're talking about the way they did it and the effort that they put in. And with the group where they praised for the outcome, the long-term effort diminished and the results diminished. And what they actually found with that over time was that group actually started to take shortcuts in order to just get the desired result. So they stopped putting in the same amount of effort because they were only getting the praise for the end result. So they were just doing exactly what they needed to do in order to get that result. And that is something that I've seen in my life. I've seen and also seen in a lot of my previous clients and things like that. And I start to see it pop up with my kids and with the fact that they are, if we praise them for a result on something, they're looking for that praise. They want to be seen, they want to be heard, but because they want that praise, and that's where the praise is coming from, they're only going to do the work required in order to get there. And that particular group in the study, they would only do what they needed to in order to tick the box. None of them would go over and above because that's not where they were getting that praise from. Whereas the group that was praised for effort ended up getting better long-term results, taking less shortcuts, still getting the same or better end results than the group that was getting praise for the outcome. But the effort that they were consistently putting in was one where they were going over and above what they needed to in order to achieve the same outcome, and at times achieved a better outcome than the other group. And I think there's a lesson there, not only from the point of view of raising kids, but for us as individuals, where we have to understand the more effort we put in, and it sounds such an oversimplistic thing to say, and it really, really is super simplistic, but it's something that I know personally I've got to be constantly reminded of, because I think we do come from a generation, if you're around the same age as me, where we have been praised for the outcome all our life. And then sometimes when things get hard and we really need to knuckle down and we need to put in more effort, we actually look at what the outcome is and we go, right, what's the quickest way to get there? And then we only do what we need to do in order to get that outcome, rather than focusing on the effort, the day-to-day output, the day-to-day tasks, and those daily little tasks that we need to do, and stacking those little wins, and then understanding as a byproduct of putting our best foot forward and putting in the effort to everything we do in life. This just doesn't even apply to just training or just health. This applies to, I believe, every single aspect. This is a universal concept when it comes to just moving forward with life. If we're not putting in that effort and we're only doing that bare minimum, we're only going to get the bare minimum results. Whereas if we are putting in the effort and we're working on stacking those little wins as they pertain to the effort that we're putting in, we are still going to get that result, but we're probably going to get a little bit extra stuff as a byproduct of putting in the effort with that stuff. So focusing on that and then using that to set the example because effort is the example. Effort, when we're giving praise, needs to be the praise, and effort in the long term is the reward, not the end result. And that's just something that over the last couple of months has really been, from a thought process point of view, something that I've really been exploring within my life, and starting with me first, and then talking to my kids about it as it pertains to their life, and maybe changing my approach to the way I communicate with them about certain things that they're doing. And I think I was always mindful of this, but I've been more mindful of it over the last 6 to 12 months, because I've been quite self-critical about certain things that I've done with the whole transition that we've been through. And it's been a really interesting uh, thought project for me to go through, just around effort, and looking at times in my life where I have put in the effort and I have still gotten the result. But then the other times in life where maybe I've just done what I need to in order to tick the box. So have a think about that. Let me know if that's something that plays on your mind, whether it's something that you've never really thought about. Like, you've thought about just getting the outcome. You're so focused on the outcome that we just want to focus on getting there. And yes, effort should be a given, but I don't actually believe it is. And I think that for a lot of us, because we are so outcome driven, we're just doing the bare minimum of what we need to in order to get that outcome, when we could probably be putting in a slightly better effort. This is not going to be universal. Some of you are going to be putting in that effort, and that's great. And I applaud you for that. But for those of you that aren't, what is the example of effort that you are setting for your kids? What is the what are the behaviors that you are exhibiting that they are going to learn and they are going to take on over time? Because if we know anything, those of us with older kids, they're definitely going to do what we do. They're not necessarily going to do what we tell them to do. So thanks again for listening. Let me know your thoughts on that topic. Hopefully I didn't ramble for too long and you actually got some value out of that. But as a resource, I would go and listen to the Huberman Lab podcast on on praise and effort and growth mindset. It is a very, very interesting topic that I think that even especially as a parent, as an athlete, or whatever walk of life you're coming from as a coach, I think it is a really, really good podcast to go listen to, because there is some really great stuff in there just about the actual application and how this could apply to your day-to-day life. So thanks so much for listening. Take care, and I will talk to you next week. Goodbye.